Hello everyone, welcome to this week's live paint along. My name's Allie. If you are new here, I do live painting demos every Monday at 5 Eastern. And we've been doing some holiday themed paintings. So we're going to continue in that tonight. This is actually going to be the last paint along of 2020. Don't worry, it's coming back in January, but I'm going to take next week off just to give myself a little break over the holiday. So thank you everyone who is jumping in here and going to paint with me. Hi Bridget, hi Minetta. Nice to see everybody. I'm really excited for this one. I think a lot of you are too. If you don't know, I offer a download of the outlines for what I will be painting. So today we're doing a poinsettia and a lot of you got the outlines. So I am really excited that so many of you are painting with me. Hi Janet, hi Deborah and Catherine and Terry. Gosh, so many people, and thank you everyone for jumping in and saying hi. Also, feel free to put where you are, where you are in the world painting tonight with me. Hi, Betty. It's always fun for everyone else to see where everybody is, because we have people all over the world who watch these demos, which is so cool. And just so much fun. And tonight, I almost forgot to tell you guys, tonight's going to be a special one because I was trying to think of some way to do something kind of unique and special as we top off the last paint along of the year. So what I thought was, I'm gonna give away my painting. So I'm going to pick a name, someone who's watching, I'm going to pick a name, and when I'm done, you will get my painting. So here's what you need to do if you are interested in being entered to win. You guys listening? All you need to do is share this video. Just click the share button. You can do it now while you're watching, you can do it afterwards, and then type shared into the comments so that I know that you shared it. And then tomorrow morning, I want you to share it by 8 a.m. tomorrow Eastern. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna look and see who all shared it in the comments, and I'm gonna pick a name, and somebody's gonna win my painting. So I might mention that a few times tonight because we've got new people jumping in. Hi Holly, thank you for sharing. So yeah, I thought this would be fun and maybe a lot more people will see this video. So yes, please share it and be entered to win my painting. Okay, so let's get started painting, shall we? All right, so I mentioned that we are doing poinsettia. I'm gonna make sure I get everything in here so you guys can see my reference image and my painting really well. Always got to do a little adjusting with the camera. Let's see if we can get it all in there. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Oh, so many of you. Thank you for sharing, Seven and Tilly. Okay, I think we can see everything now, right guys? Yeah. Sometimes when I check the video afterwards, Facebook crops it down a little bit more. So I want to make sure we get everything in there. I think you guys can see it. Okay, thank you for sharing, Charla. Awesome. Okay, so here we go. This is the download, the outlines. So if you guys have never seen these before, this is how we start. Someone says there's paint on the lens. Oh dear. Let's see here. I don't see it. Let me just go real quick here. See if I can clean it off. I don't see it. Okay. I think we're good. You guys see it clear? Okay. We're gonna try this. I'm gonna tip this down a little bit so that your comments are not covering up the image. Okay. All right. So, yes, Tilly, the transfer is still available. So I was just about to say that. Many of you already got your outlines, so I have a printable download that you can trace over, and then you just use carbon paper or you color the back of it with a pencil or chalk and trace it. And then we painted over these outlines in advance with just a gray that I made from Payne's Gray, alizarin crimson, and white. And I use my little skinny script liner brush to paint those skinny lines in. But yes, if you don't have the outlines, yeah, I see those dots too, guys. I don't know what that is, but at least it's not showing up on the image. So I think we're okay. So anyways, if you want to download the outlines, I'm going to put that in the comments here after the video. So just check back. And I'm also going to have those on my website. I'm finally getting all these outlines on my website, but you can always also find them all on my Facebook page. Yeah, you guys are mentioning the 2 dots. Gosh, I swear every time I've got some new weird thing that happens. But I think we're okay. It's not blocking anything, right? So here we go. Yeah, there's snowflakes. That's right, Dawn. Okay. Okay, so I'm using golden fluid acrylics for this painting. You can use other brands, but golden is what I like, and these are the colors that I recommend. So that is what I'm going to use. So what we usually do first is we start mapping out the shadows of our piece. And so this is pretty much, we do it just about the same no matter what we're painting. And we're going to make a kind of a dark, dirty purple using Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson. And Linda, this is an 8x8 canvas. Yeah, thank you, Kim, for responding to her. So I'm just using a little square tip #1 brush, and I'm just going to look for my dark shapes. So I'm seeing a pretty dark mass up here. And I'm not looking at the colors of the objects right now. I am just finding shapes. So I like to wash these shapes in with just kind of a nice dark neutral. I usually like to do kind of a purple tone, but I don't want it to be like super purple. So that's why I like to do it with the alizarin crimson and Payne's Gray. So I kind of saw a big massive dark there, pretty dark over here. And also I forgot to mention, feel free to ask questions if this is your first demo. I mean, you can ask questions if it's your 10th demo, but just wanted to make sure everybody knows you're welcome to ask me questions. And I am looking at the screen as I go, trying to peek and see what you all have to say. There is a little bit of a delay here, so I might not see it immediately in the comment stream, but I am trying to check back. And we have a lot of people watching this one, so you guys better have something to ask me. But hopefully I can get to all your questions too. So I'm just kind of comparing shapes. I'm looking at the lines that I put down and I'm asking myself, is it light or dark on each side of the line? And that's how I'm putting it in. So if I look, I've got this one little leaf here and I see there's a dark shadow underneath it. And I am just thinning my paint with water at this point. That way it's going to dry really fast and we'll be able to move on with more layers. So my underpainting, that's what we call this portion, is pretty much all done using watered down paint. Hi, Anthony. Thank you for sharing. Yes. And if anyone's just popping in, please, if you would like to be entered to win this painting, please share this demo, this video, and type into the comments that you shared it, and then you will be entered to win it. I'm going to give it away tomorrow morning. Someone just asked, and I'm missing it, do you prepare your canvas in any way before starting? Yes, I do. I just put like 2 or 3 coats of acrylic gesso on my canvas, and I'm not picky about the brands of that. Yeah, I just buy like a cheap Hobby Lobby gesso. I don't think it really matters. So I'm just looking for dark shapes, kind of making my way across the panel, looking for the ones that jump out most at me as being dark. So I can see it's dark on the underside of this little leaf here, and as I kind of work my way around these, that's going to make the leaves stand out. So in some places I'm kind of generalizing, like I've got some deeper darks in the center here, and sometimes they're right next to some medium darks, and so with this wash it's kind of all getting the same treatment. But after we get this first wash in, I'll go back and push the deeper darks a little bit darker. I just noticed on the camera here, my purple is looking a little more purple than what it actually is. The purple I'm using is actually quite muted. I just made this with alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. But this first wash of color, if you don't have those paints, you just use whatever you want. Just make a nice dark neutral, because this actually really isn't going to matter too much. This is kind of all going to get buried. We're just doing this to create our basic roadmap of what we're trying to accomplish here. So as I layer on top, you'll see how little these colors actually matter. It's more about the value of them than the actual tone. Tammy's asking, why do you use gesso? So gesso is just kind of like a nice, somewhat chalky surface that just gives you, it just grips the paint nicely. So if I had painted the canvas with like white paint from Golden, if I put that down first, that would be a little bit slick. And so as I tried to layer on top of it, it would not take this first layer of paint quite as well. So gesso is just kind of a nice surface to get started on. But if you don't have any gesso, if you just really want to get started, another substitute for gesso would be flat white house paint. Would do a pretty similar thing to your panel. So that's one way to save a little money if you've got some paint laying around. Yeah, a flat paint would work pretty well too. I'm excited to have so many of you here tonight. This is awesome. Been doing these demos every Monday at 5 Eastern for quite some time. I mean, I pretty much kind of started when the pandemic hit and I had to move my studio home. But I started doing them as paint along. It's really just about, maybe 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. So that's kind of a new thing, but so many of you have been participating. It's been really awesome, and I love seeing all of the paintings that come out of it. A lot of you guys paint with me live, but also a lot of you do it afterwards, and this is available as a replay, so you can always go to my page here and just look under the videos tab and you'll find all my paint-alongs, and in the comments of each one you can still download the outlines. So those are usually posted a few times in the comments, just so you don't miss it. All right, so something I want to point out here is you notice how in the reference image we see a lot of these little veins, and I did not include all of them in my outlines, and that was very intentional because I didn't want this just to get super, super busy. We're just going to give a few little indications of where these veins are in the leaves. Because if we tried to put all of that in, it would really just like become so obnoxious and it would really take away from the overall look of the painting. So I'm usually really selective about that kind of thing. I don't want to include every little detail in something like that. Hi, Mary. This is your first time? Awesome. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. All right, I'm looking around. We got a good amount of color. I want to put a little bit more on the side here. And then we're going to go back with that second pass of value that I mentioned, where we're going to push the dark areas a little bit darker. Same thing over on this leaf here. I just kind of put a little indication of these veins, but I did not put all of them in. And I also just think it kind of takes away from the painting to have all that stuff going on. So gotta pick and choose what makes the cut. I'm just checking here to make sure I don't have too much glare. Let me just switch my light a little bit. It's getting tricky these days. Oopsie, gotta fix our camera now. With my changing light, now that we don't have sunlight anymore. Gotta make sure we get it all in there. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Okay. All right. Okay, so now we are going to, like I said, go back and push those darker darks. So we're going to use the same two colors, and that's alizarin crimson and Payne's gray, but now we're gonna have less water in it. That's gonna be the only difference. And so this is actually my recipe that I use for my blacks. I don't buy black paint. I always just mix these two colors together. It makes a really nice inky color. Okay, so now I'm looking for the very darkest areas. So I see a real dark wedge of background here underneath this leaf, and that's going to make the one in front of it really pop out. I see a dark chunk over here. And it's pretty dark up here. And I'm not worrying about like doing any blending. I'm just putting these dark chunks down. And that's gonna make the other areas pop out at me. I have kind of like a hollow here, another little one right there. It's kind of dark in here. We've got some pretty big dark areas down here. Let's see, I'm looking at your comments. Oh, someone's commenting to somebody else, I think. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody who is sharing. Just a reminder, if you share this video and you write shared in my comments, you will be entered to win my painting that I'm going to give away tomorrow morning. So please click that share button, and maybe some other artsy people that you know might enjoy watching a free little paint along. Okay, just a few more. Oh, we've got these dark hollows in between the stems here, so I got to get a little more detailed with my brushwork. Let's see, Kelly says, Allie, you are great at editing your paintings and focusing on the most important features. Well, thank you, Kelly. I love seeing everything that you're putting out there, Kelly. You're super talented too. Yeah, I guess, you know, having a good image to work from definitely makes a difference with how your painting turns out. And I guess just kind of deciding what you want to include in your painting. And I like to do a lot of that, you know, beforehand, before I even get to the painting stage. I'll edit my photo. I always put filters on my photos. You'll notice that this reference image doesn't look perfectly like a photograph because I have a filter on it. And my favorite filter is the Geode filter by the PixArt app, which is actually an app you can get for free. You can also get a paid version, but I just use the free version. And you can find that Geode filter, and that does some really cool things to your paintings. And I know a lot of my followers on here have been doing that with your own pieces and posting them in our group, and it's really fun to see how that's helped you. Thank you, Gail, for sharing. Okay, I think we've got, let's see, I think we've got enough of our really dark darks. So now it's gonna be like the part where it gets weird, where we're gonna put in our complementary color wash of underpainting. So if you haven't seen that before, what we're going to do is we're going to put opposite colors down over the whole thing. And then we're gonna layer paint on top of it. So I said I was done and now I'm still bopping around, but I think that's good enough dark for right now. Now we want to make sure that this first layer is totally dry before we wash over it. A few of my dark areas are still a little bit wet, but I think if I'm careful, I can probably wash over it. So I was going back and forth with what color to put under the red. I couldn't decide if I wanted to do blue or green or purple because we could really do any of those. I decided I think I'm going to go with teal. So I'm going to do phthalo blue and phthalo green mixed together. And you guys probably recognize those as colors I use an awful lot by Golden. So I like putting them together. It's going to make a really nice fun teal color. And we're just going to wash that over everything that is red. So I'm not going to be real careful about my edges like I always say. Don't worry about that. Let the color kind of flow past it. And we're just gonna wash right over that. Now you'll notice I switched to a bigger brush. See, this is it's a number 7, I think. So it's about a 1/2 inch wide. Let's see, it says, are you using regular acrylics or liquid acrylics? These are Golden fluid acrylics. So these are like real, I don't know if you can see, we've got a glare there. These are like a real thin, runny acrylic, but they're highly pigmented. And so that is why I really like those paints by Golden. They just flow like super nice. And I don't paint with a lot of texture. I like to have the brushstroke show, but I don't like actual physical texture in my paintings so much. Sometimes, but not usually. So that's why I like the Golden fluid acrylics. So that's what we're doing. Catherine, this teal is made from phthalo green and phthalo blue, and I've just watered it down. Now I'm going to avoid the areas that I see green leaves because I'm going to do something different over those green leaves. So we're just looking for the areas that are red right now. I'll wash over those. You see I'm moving pretty quick, and that's going to allow this paint to dry so that we can layer on top of it. And just keep on moving. So I was going to say many of you paint with me live during the demos, which I think is really awesome. And then other people prefer to do it afterwards because then you can pause the video, and I understand that. But what I think is really cool about those of you painting live is sometimes, even though I know I paint fast and it's a lot to follow along, it's just really cool to think about at the end of the hour, you've got a painting, right? Like it just, forces you to get it done and to not overthink things. Donna's saying, what's the medium you're using to glaze? So right now I'm just using water, but I will be using Liquitex matte medium. But you can use any brand of medium. I'm not picky about that. So I just happened to buy Liquitex because it's a little cheaper than the Golden, and it works just fine. Okay, so I think those are all the places I wanted my teal. I've got a little more red in the background here. Okay, now the rest of it, I'm gonna flip and do a different color underpainting. So I think the rest of it, I'm going to do quinacridone magenta for my underpainting. So that is one of my most favorite colors by Golden. Sorry that the paint bottle's all chewed up, but that's what it looks like. This is a really awesome color. If you don't have it, you could do any other red, but this is like a really intense purpley magenta red that you simply cannot mix. You just have to buy it. Thank you, Jan. Welcome to anybody new who is jumping in. You can download the outlines for this paint along in the comments. I'm going to be posting them. I haven't put them in yet, but you can do it afterwards. Also, I'm doing something fun where if you share this demo, share this live video, and write shared in the comments, I'm going to enter you to win my painting. I'm going to give it away. So I'd love for you guys to take advantage of that. Okay, so Just popping this magenta in everywhere else that we have not put color. And I'm also kind of, you know, being loose, letting it overlap some of my teal because we don't have to be so precise, and it's actually more fun if we're not. And then we're ready to start putting some of the real color in, I think. I got a few little drips there. Linda, you love the magenta. I know, I love this magenta. It somehow makes its way into like every painting. I don't know how, I don't know what I did before I knew about it. It's just part of my world now. All right, it's dripping a little too much on me. Okay, so now the green is pretty much dry. So now we can start layering on top of it. Sharon says, first time watching, welcome, thanks for watching. Let's see, it says, please explain your reasoning for the colors you selected, the underpainting. Sure, no problem. So I do a complementary color underpainting, but I take some liberties with it. But in general, red and green are opposites on the color wheel. So if I want to do teal, that works too, just to kind of change it up a little bit. And then the magenta, I'm calling that a red, and so I'm putting the magenta in areas where we see green, just kind of working with the opposites there. So hopefully that helps out. I'm adjusting my lighting a pinch because I think you guys have a bit of a glare. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So now we're gonna start by making some of the red tone that we will be using for the poinsettia. So we're going to just start kind of pulling out some of the red highlights. And we'll make our red using, let's see, we're going to use cadmium red. I have cadmium red medium hue here by Golden, and a little bit of white. Oh, I need some white. How did I not put white on my palette? And maybe we'll just start with using those two for the red. I gotta see how that looks. So this is just cadmium red and white, and that might do what I want it to do. I'm gonna add a little bit of glaze in there to thin it out with this layer. And again, this is Liquitex Matte Medium Glaze. Thank you, Janet, for sharing. Okay, so now I'm just gonna start looking for these highlights. And I am going to make sure I leave some little bits of the teal popping through. So it's very easy to get carried away and to cover up too much of it. So I always say err on the side of leaving more, because you can always cover up more later. And so I always like to kind of start with what's easy. So this big leaf up here on the left is kind of jumping out at me as being the easiest one to find. So that's where I am going to start. And I'm not doing any blending right now. I am just finding these shapes and I'm laying them down. You can see I'm kind of just doing like quick swooping strokes. And I'm not worrying so much about the way every little detail is showing up. I'm just looking for the major forms of highlight. And this is always kind of like that awkward stage where you go, like you're transitioning from that underpainting color to what the actual color is. And so it gets a little bit confusing for a few minutes, but as we continue to layer, it'll make more and more sense, I promise. And you'll notice if I have a big area of this color, I kind of lay it down in one big fat swoop rather than doing a bunch of tiny ones. I just try to kind of fill it in all at once. And that just makes the brush strokes more kind of fluid and more intentional. Makes it seem like you meant to do it. Rather than like a bunch of little tiny ones, it's kind of like, well, am I doing this right? I'm not sure. So then you just end up doing like, but if you just drop it in there confidently, you'll be happy with the result. Let's see, Bridget is asking what color for the red. So this is cadmium red, medium hue, and white. That's all I've done so far. So Crystal asked, you missed the part about your black mix. So my black is alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. Those are the two colors that I mixed together to make black. So I'm just kind of working my way around, looking at where those large forms are, but still leaving quite a bit of that teal showing through. And it's gradually starting to make sense, I hope. Part of the reason for doing this complementary color underpainting technique is that the top layers of color will actually look more vibrant and more alive when they're contrasted by their complement. So I'm not the first artist to do this. I mean, artists have been doing this for centuries, but it's definitely something I like to incorporate in my work because it really adds an extra level of richness than if you were just painting on like a white background or even just like a neutral color background, because they kind of vibrate. They make your eye kind of go back and forth between the two colors. So when the underpainting is done, you're not using fluids anymore. No, I am. These are still same paints. I'm just not thinning them with water right now. I'm thinning them with a little bit of glaze. But yes, still fluid acrylics. I use those the whole way through. So that's kind of the cool thing about the fluid acrylics. They can be very transparent. But you can also make them, pretty opaque when you want to. So there's a lot of versatility there. I guess that's why I really like them. And some places I'm completely skipping over because I'm not seeing a highlight that's this bright. Like in this area right here underneath this leaf, I don't see any highlights that bright. So I'm gonna put that in with a different recipe. So right now I'm kind of looking for like my lighter 50% of the red areas, and that's what I'm putting in with this first pass. And like this red down here, this actually has a different tone. It's a little bit more orangey, so I'm not putting anything in there. Same thing with this one up here. It's a little bit more orangey, so I'm going to skip right over that. So I'm paying attention to the different types of reds that are going on right now. All right. So now I'm going to do just a couple more I saw in this one I want to add in. Now I'm going to add a little bit more of the a little bit more of the cadmium red to it, which is going to warm it up a little bit. And I'm going to go back and add a little bit more glaze. And we're just going to put some of the slightly darker shadows in. Some of those places that I totally skipped over. So I'm still using the same two colors though. I'm using cadmium red and white. And this is just going to go in some of those darker areas. But I'm not covering up all of that teal. I'm just filling in a little bit more of it so that it's not quite so dominant. Notice I'm kind of paying attention to the directions of the leaves and the veins as I'm laying my brush strokes down. And all of those kind of outlines that we put down, I'm gradually kind of covering those up. We don't want to see those outlines in the final painting. Martha's asking, how much glaze with the fluid acrylic? So that's really just kind of like personal touch. So the more glaze that you add, it's going to allow more of the underpainting to show through. So I don't have an exact recipe. You kind of just have to feel it. But a good kind of rule of thumb is that I start my painting as I'm doing these layers using more glaze. And then as I work up and add additional layers on top, I'll make those layers more and more opaque. So there will be less and less glaze as we go. So I guess in the beginning, I'm using a little bit more because I'm letting more of that underpainting show through. Hopefully that is helpful for an explanation. It's interesting when I'm doing these live demos, it's actually teaching me a lot more about the way I paint because I'm having to really kind of think it through and figure out why I do what I do. So it's been good for me too. Thank you, Donna, for sharing. Thank you, everyone who's sharing. Y'all are getting entered to win this painting for sharing this and putting it in the comments. All right. Getting close with what we needed with this one. So we're getting kind of like the mid-tones in right now. And then I'm going to switch. I'm going to pull out some brighter tones next. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I think I'm going to stick with those same two colors, but I'm going to do more white now. So I'm going to go back, add more white to the cadmium red, but now I'm going to push it to even lighter than my first pass. So these are going to be our even lighter highlights. And so I'm going to look, where are those very brightest highlights that are looking kind of pink? And this is real pointy. I want to get that nice and pointy there. And this is going to, now this layer is going to really start to give us a lot more depth because we kind of found those mid-tones, and now dropping these highlights in, it's going to give it a lot of dimension because we've built up a place for these highlights to sit. So this is pretty bright over here. And so we're still just using those same two colors, cadmium red and white. But it's interesting how it looks different as it's layered on top of that teal tone. And it's just starting to give it more and more dimension. But you notice I'm not putting these highlights everywhere. If I put the equal amount of highlight all over on every single leaf, it would just kind of lose its richness. So I'm just kind of dropping around and looking for where I see the very brightest highlights. All right, just a couple more of these and then I want to move on and start putting in some of our green tones. And I'm kind of like backing away from the piece and kind of squinting at it to see if I've got everything that I really want in there. And guys, feel free to be asking questions. That's what I'm here for. And you guys are the lucky ones who are watching this live. So please take advantage of that. All right, so let's put some green in, shall we? I actually wish I would have put my underpainting a little different color in the center where I'm going to put green. I wish I would have switched and put magenta down there, but I didn't, so it's okay. Let's make a green using Hansa Yellow Opaque, which is my favorite yellow, and just a tiny, tiny, tiny speck of phthalo green, because phthalo green's so intense. And then we're going to knock that down by putting some cadmium red in there. Oh, that was a little too much cadmium red. So it's Hansa Yellow, phthalo green, cadmium red. That's what I'm mixing up right now. I'm gonna put a little glaze in there. So I always like to make my greens a little bit more on the olive green side, because I don't like it to be like too grassy green. So we're starting out with kind of this nice olive green tone. We're gonna drop some of that into the center. Would have looked better if I had put magenta in my center, but it's okay. So we're just dropping a little bit of that. We're gonna add some more highlight after that dries. But I'm going to take this color and use this for some of the leaves in the background. So we've got some bright green leaf coming in right here. I'm gonna extend my green out a little bit more because I'm just seeing a tiny corner of it and then it goes into shadow and I wanna see a little bit more of it. And it's my painting, so I can do that. So Crystal's asking, how do you know when to add glaze? So basically, I just add glaze for the purpose of making the paint more transparent. So, you know, it's really up to you what you're trying to do with your painting, but when I'm trying to let more of my underpainting show through with my colors, then I add some glaze to thin out my paint. When I want the paint color to look more opaque, I don't add the glaze. So got a little carried away with my greens there. I'm gonna put some green up over here in this leaf. And this leaf down here is quite dull in the photo, but I'm gonna put it in a little bit brighter just to give it some harmony with the one up here. And I think I'm gonna do the same thing and put a little green in over here, just so that we've got a little bit more interest over there. And let's see, the stems of the poinsettia, I guess those are more red. I'm not gonna put any green in there. But where else do I wanna drop a little green in? You know, I think that's probably enough of that color. So now I'm gonna add some white to it and some more yellow to make a new brighter green. Kyra's asking, what size brush have you gone back to? I'm using a number 1, no, I think this is a number, yeah, this is a number 1 flat tip brush. So it's pretty small. I might even get a little bit smaller now with some of the detail, but I try to keep my brush as big as I can so that I don't get too carried away with the details. So I just added a little bit of white and a little bit more yellow and green to my mixture to make it a little bit more of a lime green. So now it's got less of that red in it, which was toning it down. And I'm going to use that to put these little highlights in the center. Just kind of drop them in. And I'm gonna thin it out a little bit with a little more glaze. And I'm going to use this to add some highlight on top of this leaf. I wish this was a little more dry there. So when I layer color, I want my first layer of paint to be pretty much dry so that I can layer on top of it. Sometimes with these live demos, I don't get that because I'm working pretty fast, but it's okay. So I'm gonna add some of that green highlight down here. Okay, and now over here on the left side, we have like this window of white background, but I don't want to make that white. So I'm going to make that a really light green. So I'm going to take a scoop of white and just a pinch of that light green I was using. So it's just going to be like almost white, but mostly like a greenish sage color. And I'm going to put that chunk of background in there with that, where it's still kind of white. And we've got some little hollows. Let's see, we've got a little hollow here between the leaves. I'm going to do the same thing with that white color, kind of greenish white color. And where else do we have a little window? We've got a little bit up here that's actually showing up darker, but I'm going to pop it in with this light color because I want to give that some harmony. And then we'll use this very bright color to add just a little bit of highlight on the center too. So we've kind of built up a base for those. There we go. All right, we're getting there. Okay. So I want to put some warm red highlights in now. We've done a lot of cool red highlights. So I'm going to use Pyrrole Red now. We haven't used Pyrrole Red. This is Pyrrole Red Light, and it's more of an orangey red. I'm going to use that with white, and that's going to put in some more orangey tones for us. So let's see. I'm going to just kind of drop around and see where I can find some of these slightly warmer red tones. And these are going to nicely contrast those cool sections that we've put in. So in some places I'm just going to be kind of overlapping what I've done, but you can see how it really pops now because it's against those other tones. And you don't want to put like equal amounts on every petal because that starts to look a little too planned. So really just kind of look for those areas that feel warm on the leaves. And that's where we're going to drop this in. Again, this is Pyrrole Red Light and White. And definitely, guys, let me know if you've got any questions about this. If you are new here, welcome to this paint along. I do these every Monday at 5 Eastern, and you can also watch them as a replay afterwards. And you also have the option to download the outlines and paint with me, and those will be in the comments of this video. So I see a few little warm sections here. So we kind of like started in the middle and worked our way, you know, we found our darks and now we're kind of pulling out the highlights. So that's kind of how I work. I kind of start in the middle and push in both directions. And it helps you to kind of know how far to go when you do kind of start in the middle, because you have something to compare it to. All right. I need to go back to my first recipe to put these little stems in because I didn't do that very well. So my first red was cadmium red and white. So I'm going to go back to that and just add those little bitty stems in. Vivian is asking, is painting portraits very different? I don't really feel like it is. I kind of approach most of my subject matters in a pretty similar way. You know, where we start with a nice underpainting base and, you know, we look for the shadows and the highlights. So to me, it doesn't make a huge difference if it's portraits or, you know, a still life. I guess the major difference is in the way that I treat like some of the features. And I guess, yeah, that's probably the main difference, is really capturing somebody's essence and their features. There's some extra things going on there where you're not just painting an object. So guys, I'm just going back with that first recipe of cadmium red and white, and I'm just filling in a few little places that I feel like I missed that I want to pop in there. And while we've got the cadmium red and white, I think I take that back. I'm going to switch and we're going to do our brightest pink highlights, because in our very brightest areas, I want to push that even a little bit brighter. So I'm going to do our very brightest highlights. I want to be a really cool pink. And cool, I don't mean like awesome, but it's going to be kind of awesome. I'm going to do those with white and that quinacridone magenta. So that's going to look almost like a purpley pink, and I want to put some really bright highlights in with that. I think that's going to be fun. So it's just white and quinacridone magenta. And I want to, well, that's still not bright enough. We need to add more white. Sometimes I don't know until I get it on there. See if we can get that bright enough. There we go. So this is mostly white, quinacridone, magenta, and white. And that's a little too cool, I think. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of cadmium red to it. So now it's cadmium red, quinacridone, magenta, and white. So it'll be a little bit more of a pinky tone. Because that magenta made it look a little too purpley. It's funny, colors look different on your palette a lot of the time than what they do when you actually get them on the canvas and they're up against other colors. Just looking around here. So I don't want to do this in too many places because that's going to get a little obnoxious, I think. So we'll just do a couple. And now you guys might notice in the edited image, there are some kind of intense purpley tones showing up in some of the shadows. And so I think we're going to put that purple in with some of this quinacridone magenta and a little bit of permanent dark violet. So that's going, those two together, and just a pinch of white, I think. We'll drop some of this new purpley tone into some of the shadows. So this is quinacridone, magenta, permanent dark violet, and white. And I'm going to layer this into some of the shadows, and it's really gonna look fun. And this is one of those colors that I wouldn't see had I not put the filter on it. The filter kind of brings out these fun colors in the shadows. But it really just makes the painting, it makes it so much fun to see these fun tones showing up in the shadows. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my quinacridone magenta in there. Just drop some, yeah, that looks good. And we'll put a little bit of this in the background. Where else do we see some in the shadows? Over here. A little bit on there. Okay, I like that. Now, let's see, what do we want to do next? I think I want to build up some of these darks a little bit more, because now after I've layered in all the other colors, I feel like my darks need to get pushed back even a little bit further. So I'm going to make a nice cool dark using Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson, but I'm also going to add a little bit of phthalo green in there. So Payne's Gray, alizarin crimson, phthalo green. So it's going to make it a little bit cooler of a dark tone. And this we're going to just push in those very darkest areas. And this is going to make all the other petals really pop forward. But I'm not going to completely fill in these dark little valleys. I want to leave some little bits of those other tones popping through. So I'm just going to push it in a couple of places. Oh, let's see, we had a leaf that came up there, but I didn't include it. So I'm just going to put my dark a little bit further down. That's okay. Nobody's ever going to count your leaves and compare it to the reference image. So just remember, don't worry about it so much. That's what I always tell my students in my live workshops. Nobody's going to count. Kelly's asking, what do you find the PixArt Geode filter makes the reds dull? And yes, I do. But you know what I do? I just saturate them after I do the filter. I will resaturate the colors. I'll just crank up the saturation. Yes. And sometimes I have to warm it up a little bit. I missed one other question. I just went too far through the comments. Okay. So yeah, you guys see how putting these darks back in is making everything else pop. So I just kind of push them back because we got them a little bit lost. We have one little weird leaf here that I never really put in. I'm just going to cover that up. I don't want to do that one. All right. We're getting really close, and it's probably after 6. Oh, it's almost 6. Okay. So I think the last thing I want to do is put a couple of blue tones in here. I see some like little blue kind of highlights poking through behind this leaf and just in a few other places. So I'm going to use my favorite blue recipe, which is phthalo blue and white. And I'm going to add a little bit of glaze to thin that out. I might need a little more phthalo blue. Yep, I do. Crystal asks, am I doing live workshops? I would absolutely love to, Crystal. So all of my 2020 workshops had to be canceled, unfortunately, you know, as everything else was. But yes, absolutely. In 2021, I'm definitely planning on having live workshops, but nothing's on the calendar right now. So this is phthalo blue and white, and I'm just going to drop this in a few places. I'm not exactly sure where, but I'm going to try putting a little bit in here. But at least if I can't have live workshops, I can have online workshops. And you guys, if you don't know, I do offer like full online workshops. This is just kind of a little sample. And you can find all my online workshops on my website. And my portrait painting online workshop is going to be retired forever in about a week and a half. December 31st is the last day to register for that workshop. Once you buy it, you keep it for a full year. But doors are closing on that one, and it's 50% off. So if any of you want to learn portraits, grab that workshop before it's gone. All right, so I just dropped a few little bits of that blue. I think I'm going to keep it, but it's not super intense. I feel like maybe I want to brighten it up a little bit more. I'm going to add a little more white to it and make it a slightly brighter teal. Maybe I'll add a little bit of phthalo green too, since we started with that phthalo green base. So this is now phthalo green, phthalo blue, and white. And I'm just going to drop this in a few places. Because this was our underpainting, so I always like to kind of mirror that after I've layered on top. I like to drop it into a few places to kind of like bring it back, especially if we lost a lot of it. I like to, especially like at the edges, it's kind of fun to drop some of that extra color in. Looking around, what else do I want to do? It might be one of those times where I need to just stop. I think we're pretty close. I think I need a little more shadow around my center of my green flower, and I'm switching to a smaller brush now. This is actually a really small one. This is kind of ridiculously small. I never really worked that small, but I'm just gonna go back to that dark recipe and just put in a little bit more of that dark around my center, because I kind of lost the shape of my little green ball things here. So sometimes when I'm throwing my color down, I get a little carried away and I lose the shape, and sometimes that's okay, but for the center, I want it to be a little bit more clear. So just going back and kind of cleaning that up a little bit. And yeah, same thing over here. Oh, that's probably good. Scanning it, and I think we're gonna pretty much call this one, you know what, I wanna add a little bit more red. I feel like my red mid-tone could just be a little bit more. So I'm gonna go back and do a little bit more of the cadmium red and white. So that was that first red mixture that we did, cadmium red and white. And remember I said how I always leave like a lot of my blue or my underpainting, I leave a lot of it showing because then I can always go back and cover more of it up. So now this is kind of that stage where I've left a lot of it showing, and I've decided I kind of want to go back and just fuse some of those shapes together to make it a little bit less busy with that underpainting. So I'm just going to put some fatter brush strokes down and just cover up a little bit more of the underpainting. And this is kind of up to you. You know, maybe you have more of your underpainting, or I mean, you covered more of yours up to begin with, so maybe you don't need to do this. But I just feel like I left a little bit more than what I want. So this is kind of the stage where I can adjust that. And then this will be pretty much done. And I'm going to announce, I'm going to go live tomorrow morning at 10 to announce who won this painting. So if you want to be entered to win the painting, just hit the share button, share this video, and write shared in the comments, and you will be in the drawing to win my painting. And that will be really fun. All right. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it, otherwise I'm gonna get too carried away and make a mistake. We don't want that. Okay, this one is done. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I am so happy that you stuck it out with me until the end. Thank you everybody for sharing. Thank you for putting shared in the comments. And yeah, this is our last paint along of 2020. And so I'm taking next week off, but I will be back January 4th with the new paint along. And I'm just thrilled that you guys watched this and painted with me. If you did paint with me, make sure you share your painting in my group, which is open to everybody, Allie's Paint Friends. You can find that group because it's super fun to see what everybody did. So please share it. And everybody have a great night. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and Happy New Year. All right, take care, everyone.